Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, sir.
So there are lots of internet issues with you all. It seems that you are not able to attend the classes. Is that so? તો પછી શૈતાની કરો છો બધા ભેગા થઈને. Hello.
Yes, sir.
બધા શૈતાની કરો છો કે ખરેખર ઇન્ટરનેટ નો ઇશ્યુ છે?
Sir, I already wished you good afternoon.
ના 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 હું તો ગઈકાલની વાત કરું છું. તમે SYBA ના ગ્રુપમાં બધા મેસેજ કરતા હતા ને કે અમારો ઇન્ટરનેટ ખરાબ છે, ઇન્ટરનેટના પ્રોબ્લેમ છે, એટલે મને થયું કે હું આજે જરા પૂછી લઉં કે ખરેખર ઇશ્યુ છે કે તમે ખાલી ખાલી તોફાન કરો છો. Seriously, nobody is online, nobody is. Teaching to nameplates. That's what I am thinking right now. Teaching to nameplates. Harshita, Aisha, Priya, then Shiv. Okay, only 4 students. Interesting. Okay, so yesterday we talked about Mohanlal and karma and the problem with Khushwant Singh's characters. The train incident, that's where the main event takes place. So the plot of the story have been discussed. We have discussed Mohanlal's character, Lakshmi's character, and the incident. Okay, so do you have any questions about this story?
Sir, did they just throw him off because of his showing of nature? The soldiers.
No, no dear, no dear, no dear, no dear. Okay.
I did not get the end. Why did they throw him off?
Yeah, why did they throw him out is a very interesting question. If you look at the soldiers, they were British, right?
Yes.
And, Mohan was an Indian, and that is enough for people to consider superiority of race, that I am something based on the power they have derived from their skin. So it is a similar kind of incident that has happened to Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi when he was in South Africa and he was traveling from one place to other. Actually, he was traveling from Pietermaritzburg to Durban, where he lived, and he bought the ticket because, in fact, he was given the ticket for the first class, because in those times when Gandhi was traveling, he was considered as a man, a barrister, and a reputation. He studied in England. So who bought a ticket for him? They thought that it is the right kind of compartment for him to travel in. And things got worse when he was seen in the compartment And because at the time when we are reading the story, the racial discrimination in India and across the world was at its peak. Despite your education, whether you are Indian, African, or Latin American, or even Canadian, in Canada, the racial discrimination at the time was at peak. So just because he was Indian, he was thrown out of the compartment, and there was no other reason as such. And that's where the inhuman aspect of colonization comes into play. You might get a question that why, because he was a barrister, he was from an economic upper class, he dressed like British, he took education in England, but all that does not matter. What matters is the color of your skin. Because the two soldiers, what they saw is just the person wearing the clothes from the culture that they shared with him, but they did not share the color of the skin. Let's consider this, that the Mohanlal was white, was uneducated, but was in the attire like they were wearing. Like if Mohan was a soldier and he was a bride, and if his name was not Mohan, and let's say his name was Mac, would he be thrown out of the train? No. The only reason these two soldiers acted the way they acted is the race of Mohan, Mohan's identity, right? So there is no other question, there is no other point for the discussion. It's just race, karma. And now when the writer gives the title like karma, what he means that whatever he has done with his own people, these people are doing the same with him. And that's how the karma returns to him. Does that answer your question, Harshita?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other question that you, any of you have about the story and you find it difficult to understand any concept? See, the only way that I can understand whether you have listened the lecture, attended the lecture, is the fact that you may ask a question or you respond to my question. Because the way I see the nameplates on my screen doesn't motivate me to talk much in detail. So it would be a very disadvantageous on both the sides if you don't ask or respond, right? So whoever is listening, I don't know who is listening to me. And that's very frustrating. And I don't want to get this frustration out on my screen or in the lecture. So I would advise you strongly and request you that wherever I ask a question and whenever I ask a question, either you say something, don't just remain silent like dumb, okay? So make sure that you respond, because if you don't respond, I won't get any feedback. And if I don't get any feedback, it seems that I'm talking to a screen, and it's really not healthy sign for communicator, the sender, right? Hope you can understand the situation, and I would pray to God that you also come in the same situation one day, where you assume that somebody is listening to you, but in fact they don't respond to you. Okay, let's move on because enough is said about whatever has to be said. Okay, now let's move on to the next interesting story, and I am sure that you must have read this. The story called Post Office, or it's titled as The Letter. written by Dhumketu. Now, actually, this story is written in Gujarati, and Dhumketu is one of the pioneers of short story writing. So we need to understand a bit of Gujarati language and literature. I will not ask you to read Gujarati, but if you can read the short story and then go to the English one, it would be very interesting. Because it is one of the best short stories written so far in Gujarati, it is impossible that you might not have read this in your syllabus, whether it's a CBSE or a Gujarat board. So you must have acquainted yourself. If not, I will make you acquainted, whatever means I have with me at my disposal. Okay, so the history of Gujarati literature may be traced to 1000 AD. Around this time, the Gujarati literature started to be written. Not the way you read Gujarati nowadays, in a different version of the Gujarati. When I say different version, there are gradual developments in the language. Like you have, when we started English literature, we started with medieval English, Chaucer's stories, the Canterbury Tales. And you know that the English written, I actually showed you a portion of the text, and you find it difficult to talk about what does it mean. So that language was quite different than the language we are reading nowadays. So after this period, around 1000 AD, the Gujarati literature and language has flourished and changed at many points. We are not going to discuss the entire history of Gujarati literature and language, but we have to understand that Gujarat has been ruled by Gujarati Jadejas like Prithviraj Singh Chauhan. Then there were many princely states within Gujarat, but the influence that has come was from the patronage of those who were ruling, whether it's a Jadeja, whether it's Chauhan or Chawdas in the Patan region. All those rulers, they provided patronage at some point in history. But later on, after Mughal Empire started, Mughal Empire started in Gujarat, nobody promoted Gujarati language and literature. And even today, the same can be said. But that's very sad that even today, Gujarati literature has not been promoted by the government of Gujarat. They might give some funding, they might give some money, but the way it should be done is not done. So that's a point. But then the major writers, they promoted themselves. There are organizations, individual organizations, and the composers, the writers themselves promoted this language and literature. And so patronage, in the sense that you give promotion to the kind of language and literature throughout, whether it's a right, wrong, high class, low class, whatever. So we have famous writers in the form of Hemchandracharya, Narsi Mehta, Mirabai, Akho, Premanand, Shamal, Dayaram, Dalpatram, Narmad, Govardhan Ram Tripathi, which we talked about in the history of Indian writing in English. Gandhi, Kanayalal Munshi, Umashankar Joshi, Suresh Joshi, Suman Shah, Pannalal Patel, Ishwar Chandra Petlikar, Rajendra Shah, and there are innumerable authors who have contributed to the Gujarati language and literature. So Dhumketu is one of them. And why we need to understand Dhumketu? Because of this writer, the short stories rose to national level. Now, when we say national level and Gujarati literature, there are two different things. We have to understand national literature means literature written across India, right? Across different languages, across different regions. And when we say regional literature, we talk of Gujarati literature, we talk of Marathi literature, we talk of Bengali literature, and all these literatures, the best of the regional literature can come up and form literature of India, Indian literature, where I is capital and where L is capital, right? So we have to understand when regional literature is written in regional languages, they are confined to a particular geographical boundary. But once they are translated either in English or Hindi, they get a reputation at national level. Like one of the writer who is living today, his writing has been translated into almost all the languages of India. Sharan Kumar Limbale, he is a Dalit author. So his work is translated from Marathi. He writes in Marathi. From Marathi to Tamil, Telugu, Assamese, Gujarati, Punjabi, Bengali, and all the languages they can think of, including English. And that makes the literature standing out in the corpus of regional literatures. So Dhumketu's this story allowed Gujarati literature to rise above the regional boundaries and to cross the national boundaries and reach into the center called national literatures of India. Now, let's look at what is Dhumketu. Dhumketu આજે ખુશી છે નહીં છે ખુશી otherwise આ તો રાજકોટના છે. He belongs to Rajkot, a place called Virpur. આપણે જલારામ બાપાનું ટેમ્પલ જે કહીએ ને, that's where he was born. So near Gondal, this place is near Gondal. So he was born on 12th December 1892 and he died on 1965, the second war that we had with Pakistan. So he did not write under his original name, that was Gauri Shankar Govardhan Das Joshi. Now, why would people do not write under their original name? There are many reasons, and one of the reasons is that they don't want to use their identity. The second reason is they like the way it is. Takallus upanam pote dharan kare. I would like to take Dhumketu as one of my name. A writer's name, writer's choice, that how would I like to know my identity to be revealed as. So Dhumketu is one of the interesting name that he came across, and he wrote under that pen name or pseudonym. So he was one of the pioneers of the Gujarati short stories, and he had written almost 24 collections of short stories and 32 novels on different subjects that includes history and social sciences. He has written plays and travelogues, and out of that we are going to read one short story in the form of letter or post office in Gujarati. So major writing, his major writing style is that he writes in a poetic style, and remember again, this is the time when Romanticism was at its peak, when Britishers brought all the material of romantic times during their during their time. So he was, like others, was influenced by the Romanticism, and he depicted the powerful emotions, like human emotions. And you will realize once you read the story how the sentiments play an important role in this short story. So he, like others, graduated with Sanskrit and English in 1920, and it was this time that Gujarati language graduation was not possible even. So Gujarati language was used, but it was not taught at graduation level. So his main language was Sanskrit and English. Why Sanskrit? Because he was a Brahmin, and it was this time when Pandit started using Sanskrit language for all the karmakans. So Sanskrit language, the fluency over Sanskrit language was giving him an extra edge to do something. And even those who were literate, those who were educated with Sanskrit, they were supposed to teach English, Gujarati, and Sanskrit languages. So later they get jobs based on their qualification, that you must know either one native language and the other, the official language of the Raj, that is the colonization. So he knew English and he got a job in railways in Gondal state. But he did not like it and left the job, and he came to Ahmedabad, and that's where his writing career started. He started this teaching in a school called Shreyas Foundation, which was run by Ambalal Sarabhai, father of Vikram Sarabhai. And the important thing about this school is, if you have known this school, or if you are in Ahmedabad, or if you like to visit someday in future, this is a place to visit in Ahmedabad, Shreyas Foundation. It is in the heart of Ahmedabad, and once you enter into the premises of the school, you will realize that how different the school is compared to the rest of the schools and colleges and even universities in Gujarat. This school was built based on the idea of three different educational philosophies. One, Gandhian philosophy; second, Tagorean philosophy; and the third, Montessori philosophy of education. Why it is important to remember this? Because what Dhumketu is doing later in his life is influencing the school, and what the school is doing is going to influence how Dhumketu is writing and teaching Gujarati. I have worked with the school, so I know more about school, and that's why I am talking about the school. It's a very green, lush campus, and it is available online, so you can see the campus. When it was started, there were animals in the campus, and you can actually see deer, rabbits, and all sorts of birds. And Mrs. Leenaben Sarabhai, she took a very critical interest in the development of the school. And Indira Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru have visited the school, and Montessori Madam Montessori, she designed the syllabus for the course of the school, and that's why in 1970s, 80s, 90s, the school had a reputation, and to get an admission into school was very difficult. Like, you get an admission into Oxford, so it was very reputed school at the time. Today, Abhay Mangaldas is running the school, and Mrs. Dr. Trivedi, I forgot the name, first name, but Dr. Trivedi is the principal, and I worked as a content developer for smart classes, and I developed media lab there with the help of Bosch Foundation. So if you happen to go to Ahmedabad at some point in your life, you must go there. It has a beautiful museum. It has lots of artifacts from which students learn about culture and language. And it has a musical classroom where it's actually based on the idea of Rabindranath Tagore Shantiniketan. Whatever students do, they do and learn. They just don't go into the classroom. They learn it in the classroom by doing things. So Dhumketu wrote 492 stories. One title is known as Tankha, and it was published in 1926. He was awarded Ranjit Ram Gold Medal in 1935 by Gujarati Sahitya Sabha, which again is interesting organization where non-Gujaratis were part of the organization, especially if you remember the Forbes. He was a part of this organization. Then he was awarded Kavi Narmad Gold Medal, And he was one of the advisors to the Sahitya Academy, Delhi, when India got independence in 1947. So 10 years later, he was a member of the advisory council to the Sahitya Academy. It is one of the highest literary body in India. And if somebody is getting an award from Sahitya Academy, that means his work has been recognized by the government of India, and his work has some valuable contribution to the field. Not everybody gets a Sahitya Academy Award, like not everybody gets Oscar or Nobel Prize Literature. So similarly, Sahitya Academy is one such kind awards that we have to remember. He won a rare honor. Now, this is very interesting that he represented India. Dhumketu represented India in the United States of America. And his book was published called Stories from Many Lands. So he is not an ordinary personality. He is not an ordinary Gujarati writer that we are going to study. He is an extraordinary writer whose writing has been recognized not only in India, not only in Gujarat, but abroad as well. So we often say that what is in Gujarati literature? So Gujarati literature, Gujarati no. If we don't value our own literature and culture and language, nobody is going to do that. So the prime responsibility of learning our own language and our culture is on us, is really on us. That if you don't make contribution, if you don't do anything for your own language and literature, nobody else is going to do. આસા ના જેવું છે, તમે તમારું ઘર સાફ નહીં રાખો, ઉજળું નહીં રાખો, એને ડેકોરેટ નહીં કરો તો કોઈ પારકા પડોશી તો આવવાના નથી. It is like this. So if you want to progress in the field of language, literature, or cultural studies, you must know what are your roots, what is your language, who contributes to your language. See, since Indian writing in English, we have started, we are talking of Bengali literature, we are talking of Gujarati literature now, and maybe in Premchand, we will talk about Hindi literature, in a short story called Premchand's Shroud. We'll talk about Hindi literature. And then you will say, sir, we are not talking of anything writing in English. We will talk about Raja Rao's Kantapura. See, the purpose of this paper is not just to make you acquaint with writing in English, but those writers whose writing in regional language has been translated into English and may have made their mark. So at the end of the graduation, you might be aware of the writing traditions from regional languages, national languages, and writing in English, including translations. So that's what the purpose of this story to include in the syllabus, that we must be familiar with the writing traditions. Khushwant Singh writes in English. So that's what we read about. Now we will read about a story in Gujarati, right? So can you see what is coming on your screen? Do you see any videos that is coming on the screen? If you don't, please do let me know. That's what.
No, sir.
Okay, you don't see the video. I don't think we have too much time, but still, I will make sure that we wait. Where is it? Yeah. If you hear anything, please do let me know. If you don't hear anything, please do let me know. We have less than 10 minutes, but I want you to go through this and I will share the link. Okay, so it is taking time. Okay. If you hear, just say yes.
No, sir.
You don't hear. Okay, I'll share the link with you so that you
છે ધૂમકેતુની ટૂંકી વાર્તા પોસ્ટ ઓફિસ.
મુકુંદરાય મહેતા, શેઠ મંગળદાસ, દયાશંકર મૂળજી.
Are you able to listen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, that's great. So let's.
John Flint, Superintendent, Commissioner, Diwan Sahib, Librarian, Superintendent, Diwan Sahib,
Coachman Ali Dosa.
Okay, I'm stopping the screen, but I will share you the YouTube link in the WhatsApp as well as in the Zoom chat box. So check your okay. I have shared the link in the Google, in the Zoom class, in the Zoom chat box. So paste this link in your YouTube, or you can actually search Dhumketu in your, what do you say, in your browser or YouTube application, and you will see the entire story, 24 minutes. Go through it. There is no need to read at the moment. You might feel the pain and agony that the coachman Ali is undergoing. So this is the story which was accepted, which was published in one of the Sahitya Akademi's journal called Contemporary Short Stories, and it was translated into English. And because of this story, the Gujarati literature got attention from the rest of the India. Okay, you can watch the story in your leisure time, and this is really very interesting. And there are a couple of questions that we need to answer, because this is the story where you try to understand how emotions and feelings of a man to be taken, how it should be taken care of. Because so far, whatever literature was produced, the men was shown in a different character than what Coachman Ali is experiencing. It breaks this story breaks the stereotype that men don't have feelings and emotions, and how much love they have for their loved ones. So how can we do something about, and what can be done to take care of those emotions? And it shows that what happens if you hurt somebody's emotions, and what are the consequences. In Coachman's case, what happens? Very tragic situation. You can't call it interesting, because you are waiting for somebody, and you loved that somebody so much that you go and visit the place. You consider it as a Makkah, as a pilgrimage, and nothing happens of that sort. So how do you cope with that situation? When people look at you, how do they react? How do they comment upon your arrival day in and day out? Because you want something from your beloved ones, far, far away from you. And this is really a very tragic story. How can we have patience when somebody is somebody is trying to cope with the situation, emotional situation, how can we avoid giving extra mental stress to already emotionally stressed person? So this story is all about this. There are three basic questions that you need to answer in this story. First, how the feelings and emotions of a man should be taken care of. What would be the consequences if anybody's emotions are hurt? And the third, very important, the patience exerted by an old man for waiting letter from his daughter and hoping till his death. So how do we try to understand that what kind of love the man is carrying within his heart, and is it possible to feel the same kind of pain and agony towards the love that Coachman Ali is undergoing? So any questions so far? Okay.
No, sir.
Okay. So the story begins with an interesting, you have already seen that the story begins in the post office. Like, this is the place, no other place is taken into consideration. So the post office is the center, the setting of the story. And it begins by sounding names of the people whose post has arrived and delivery is waited. And you can see outside in a video, you will see in a video that the Coachman Ali is outside the post office and is waiting for his name to be announced. Now, once his name is announced, Coachman Ali, he rushes towards the post office and he looks into the post office as if his letter is arrived. And you can see the way he walks, the way he is dressed, he is an aged character. His clothes are tattered. From his eyes, it seems that he's just waiting for that letter. And if letter arrives, he might live another year or so. And if it does not, he will die very soon. So the people working in the post office are making fun of this man. And from the very beginning, it seems that they do not understand the pain and agony of a father whose daughter is married and is not reachable. So he is very happy and he looks, okay, I have reached my place where I'm going to get something from my daughter, a letter that he's expecting a letter. So he considered post office as a place which will fulfill his desire to have a communication with his daughter, to have a word with his daughter, to have something to tell others that my daughter recalls me, or everything is fine with my daughter. Daughter is married off a couple of years ago and he has not heard anything from the daughter. And that's what the plot drives him. And that's what he is waiting for. As he enters into the office and sits in the corner, he is doing that religiously day in and day out. Can you imagine a father waiting for his daughter's letter